G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and in today's episode you can see that we have a bunch of previews to talk through. So let's just get into it. We'll start off with the Warhammer 40,000 previews. We've got the Sisters Battle new Canoness who's jumping around off her tactical church window. Okay, it's pretty weird, but bear with me here. So it's good that this is a Canoness that's armed with a few different weapons, a few weapon swaps, because that's really gone the way of the Dodo the last few years. So many monopose characters that mean new character released in a single pose with a single loadout with a set of rules to accompany it. And then if they want to do something else, like add a Power Fist, well, that becomes another set of rules and another model. And so it's good to see model release, which at least has a couple of weapons options. Not ideal, it's not 4th edition 40k, but it is what it is. Now, the model itself, with the pose and the way that, the model is leaping forward, but the cloak is up and out to the right. No, that's not how human movement works, and it's not how physics work. So it looks a little bit weird, I think, to the eye, to the human. And it feels bulky, it doesn't feel streamlined in any way. It's not a particularly great looking model. And when you scroll down in here, you get this big image of a bunch of Seraphim leaping around. The Seraphim, I think, look fantastic. Now, why does this model, and you can see her there, not work with the other ones? Well, what are the other Seraphim? Many of the legs are close together. The legs are closed and they're leaping. They're almost pirouetting ballerina type poses. It seems more Eldar than human, and it's a very graceful pose, I think. And combine that with them being on the clear flying stance versus this new miniature. And this is a problem that we've sort of seen with Grey Knights. Grey Knights especially have this problem where your basic infantry are so interesting visually. There are very few visual cues you can add to the characters to make them stand out. So what they do is they just cover them in crap. And I think that's what's happened here is rather than put the character on a clear flight stand, they've given them a tactical rock in the form of part of a church. And they've tried to give them this longer cloak, tabard, whatever you want to call it, coming off the hips. And it doesn't work for this type of model leaping through the air. It makes them look just almost like they're tripping forwards, falling off of that. It looks like they were jumping over that piece of terrain, caught their foot on it, and now they're tumbling ass over tit over the front of it. Doesn't look right. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of a letdown, but that's why. You have a brilliant range in the Sisters of Battle in general, and the Seraphim are really good looking miniatures. They're fantastic looking miniatures, in fact, and it just doesn't live up to the Seraphim. And I can understand why. For me personally, it would be very hard to top the Seraphim and have the character look unique and individual. You would have to do something like combine like sword and shield. Like helmet wise, you can't use a regular Sisters of Battle helmet because so many have that. The hood, the bare head, all of it. It's a very hard thing to do. And so I think they've tried in their own way to do it, and it just, for me, flops. Then we get on to the Genestealer cults and the Benefactus. Or the Benefictus. It's a weird name. But this is quite good. I like this. The weird blend of human and Genestealer is always fantastic. And the fact there's like this giant tyrannid zoanthrope brain coming out of the individual who's got like a psychic cradle to help hold it up at the back of the head. Yeah, it's wonderful. I love those little touches. The fact that it's very asymmetrical, I don't know how I feel about that. I do like asymmetry in my models. But when it comes to these more HQ level characters, I prefer them to be a bit more symmetrical. Like they've evolved with that, down a very specific path. And that didn't involve having a tail, one clawed foot, one clawed hand. Like many of the patriarchs look like. So, I don't know. I think I would like the option of being able to build this as both. Either clean with, completely human arms, or 4 completely human arms. That would be unique. Or being able to build it like this. But either way, I like the miniature quite a lot. I think it looks good, and it's a good fit for the army. The Genestealer Cults, of course, getting an update, but they don't seem to be getting too many new miniatures. But it's a good looking miniature for them, and probably will actually serve a useful role, if rumours are to be believed. Alright, going on from there, Legions Imperialis up to, Supplement 3? And it was released at Christmas time. So, yeah, this is a great way to blow your money constantly on these books and rules. Now, I've spoken about it before, but this front cover here, you can clearly see those are the 28mm scale Solar Auxilia miniatures. That's a 28mm scale Shadow Sword. I'm telling you right now, that is not a small detail miniature, whether it's the barrels themselves on the weapons or the fact you can see the slot cutouts around the sponsored weapons, interesting details around the tracks and on the sides of it, the size of the rivets and details on the mudguards. That is a 28mm. So there is a plastic Shadow Sword kit to suit the Solar Auxilia, probably a Baneblade and a, the Stormhammer, is it? It'll come to my head. The specific Solar Auxilia super heavy Lord of War that Forge World made for them back when they first released, which has the sort of multiple battle cannon turrets, the triple side sponsons. Yeah, I reckon there's a kit to do all of those coming for the Solar Auxilia in plastic. I would bet $100 on it right now, because that is 28mm scale. Moving on down. It's an interesting campaign Tauran. It's one that probably should be done in 28mm. It's good to see it coming to this game system, but it doesn't seem to be coming with a huge amount of releases, and this is really something that's holding Legions Imperialis back. It's just a constant dribble of miniatures, and it just feels so lackluster and unsupported, and good luck finding people who are still playing this game, hey? No offense to those of you who are and love it, but it's looking rough out there. The Marines are getting Sabres, and then Punishers and Arcus in their Sicaran variants. And we've, of course, got the Solar Auxilia getting Morlim and Russ variants. So we've got Plasma, Demolisher, Twin Autocannon, Twin Lascannon. Okay. The only thing that's really hyper interesting to me here is if they've now got the plastic turret for the Punisher and the Arcus, that means they're going to get a plastic kit, or at least a plastic upgrade option. And of course, the Saber. The Saber is something that's needed to be plastic for a long time. That vehicle is it's like the cost of 2 Predator tanks currently in resin. Is ridiculous for something that is the size of a Rhino. Doesn't have any turrets, doesn't have any sponsons. It's got a couple of very bad-looking missiles slapped onto the side of them. So to see them coming in 28mm is welcome. I will add to that point that the Sabres in the background here could be the resin Saber, but they are way too detailed. As you can see, little things like the track going up under the track guard here. That's not resin, I don't think, and that is not plastic in 8mm scale. I'm pretty sure that's the plastic Saber right there, hidden in the background art. Pretty sure, can't confirm it, is what it is. But I just thought that was interesting, and that to me is the most interesting part of Legions Imperialis. Reveals that basically, check out the cool stuff coming to 28mm plastics. Over at Necromunda, Hive of Secundus. So another box set here. One relatively devoid of walls, I'll add. But hey, papercraft, whatever. You just tell people there are walls where the sections are blanked out, and that's all they need to know. All right, kits wise. Little Gargoyle Imp Man is a quirky design. Don't know how I feel about that creature. Also, the paint scheme here on these Spire Hunters. That's very non-typically GW paint scheme. That looks more... I don't know who the artist was that did these, but that is very non-Games Workshop, that paint scheme on the armour. It doesn't make the models better or worse for having it, by the way. It's just very interesting to see. I think the models themselves look quite cool, actually. They look very cool. So, very insectoid, that armour. Very organic looking. Cool to see. Then we go down, we get some more Van Saar characters. What have we got here? Ooh, cool sniper rifle, straight out of Destiny. Same with that other weapon there. Yeah, they look exactly what I would expect from Necromunda these days. Necromunda does a pretty good job overall of nailing the look and feel of unique and interesting warbands and tying them all together into the narrative of the game. I think overall it's about as good as you could want from a Games Workshop system. Except for the fact that they release things a bit like Imperialis, a bit hit and miss on the releases of the actual books. Alright. These sort of corrupted Genestealers. Interesting they have the same plague coming out of their backs as the Nurgle. What are they called? Not Rotbringers. The basic cultists of Nurgle. Oh, I don't know what they're called, so they can have a dumb name like Happy Fun Plague Men. But the basic Nurgle cultists and the Poxwalkers. There we go. Poxwalkers. It just came to me. So the way the Poxwalkers have those sort of coral growths coming at them, it looks like they've just taken those coral growths and put them onto the Genestealers. Now, I do like the look of these being like these weird corrupted Genestealers, having the growths coming out of them. I do like that. I think that is a good look. And I like the sort of paint scheme, very similar to what I did on my Demons of the Ruinstorm. So very pale skins, look very sickly with dark at the end of the limbs and such. Exactly what I did on my project. Very interesting to see if this is something that makes its way out into the wider Tyranid range, like a corrupted Tyranids. But I've wanted to see this for a long time, actually, where we have different hive fleets which are significantly different looking, like mutations have occurred along the way, exposed to different, radiation sources or different bioorganic compounds, mutagens, whatever it might be, and what would become of them. And it's pretty cool to see it here, even if it is in a microcosm, because it's something that, it's a great way of adding new mutations to the Tyranids without it feeling too forced. And it's a good way of adding, sub-factions into the Tyranids. But yeah, they sort of end it there. As for the Genestealer cultists, we have Genestealer cults here who are a mix of different houses, which is cool to see. Like, we've got some Orlok in here, as well as your traditional sort of Genestealer cults, padded armor mining types. So yeah, cool. I'm down with it. And old Cult Max here with his sawed-off shotgun, and yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Hive Secundus for Necromunda is turning out to be more interesting than I thought it would have been. So good on him for that. And then we move into the big preview, of course, that everyone was actually watching the video for, Plastic Mechanicum. So, it's a good release. It's a good release, but it's all over the shop with what it's putting into the box, into the battle group. This is not surprising, though. Games Workshop is terrible when it comes to putting the things you want into a box set. Instead, they always put one or two units in there that just you're sort of going, well, why are you putting that in here? That should be its own thing. And this is one of those situations. The Triaros, for example, Yeah, it's they want that big flagship plastic tank. They do it every time. Solar Auxilia, it was the Drakassan, the Heavy Sentinel, and of course the Leman Russ. The Leman Russ you wanted the basic infantry, but the Sentinel and the Drakassan especially, you could have just gone, I could take that out and make the box cheaper. And sort of like that here. So, let's get down to brass tacks. If you're going to be building a Mechanicum list, if you're going the Cybernetica route, you're going to take a lot of Castellax. If you are going down, say, maybe down the Reductor route, you'll probably take Thalax. And of course, if you're going down any other route, you're probably going to use some combination of the three types of units. But all of them together in the one box is a little bit of an eyebrow raiser. It's not the unheard of, it's just not the most common thing. And the Triaros is, well, like any transport, it's situational. You don't always want or need it. If you're taking tech thralls as just bulk infantry to just sit on objectives or something, the Triaros is probably not the vehicle for them, because you can put those points into something that's providing actual firepower on the battlefield, something aggressive. The Triaros itself is not hyper-aggressive, but by no means is it a bad vehicle, a bad choice here. It's just not the one that I would have picked to go in this box set. Even then, I mean, it is hard to pick the appropriate vehicle to go into the box set. You could pick maybe a Macrocarad Explorator, very similar function to this, however, it's more of a Mechanicum Land Raider. Krios or Krios Venator, well, that's your sort of reductor heavy firepower type thing there. Yeah, they would work, but again, they don't mix in well necessarily with the other units here. Since they've gone for the all-robot theme, they could put a Thanatar or a Thanatar Calyx in here, or two of them even, and that probably wouldn't be a bad choice. If they put a Thanatar in this box with instead of the Triaros, this would be a sort of, you'd buy three. You would buy three pretty comfortably, I think. At least two. And you would form a decent core to the Mechanicum force. Or remove the Triaros, increase the number of Thalax, and double the number of Castellax. So that would probably have been the best approach of them all. Not what they picked. Anyway, let's go down into the units themselves and talk about those. So, the Thalax, well, they've given us some different heads. So, I'm a big fan of just the blank slate type of head here. I used to paint them up with like a black gloss, so it was like a mirrored, like a big lens, like, when you see lenses on military equipment, like FLIR lenses and all that kind of thing. Unless the sun glints on them and you get that beautiful rainbow feature, they typically sort of just look like black glass. So I usually paint up Thalax that blank glass sensor dome, but they've gone through and they've got heads that are very similar to, say, Thanatar and things like that on them. I don't hate them. I definitely don't hate them. Interesting that they would choose to do that, to introduce different heads onto there. I would like to have seen them introduce a Dark Mechanicum head if they're going to go down that route, which it doesn't appear that they have. They've got this sort of plated one, the standard one, then they've added one with a grill on the lower half of the sort of visor, and of course these two Thanatar looking heads. That's fine, does the job. It looks like they've included the multi-melter in here. They've also included the phase plasma fusel in here, and photon thruster as well. They've got the lightning guns, they've got the heavy chain bayonets. The only thing about these miniatures to me is that they look a bit more squat, a bit more solid than the old Thalax did. So the old Thalax have very spindly legs, and they've got a bit of bulk in the torso, and could be because the angle of photos are shot on, but the guns look a little bit stubbier. So I've got some old Thalax here to see, and you can see the legs are very long and thin, very, very thin legs. It could just be my eyes, but these guys look just a little bit chunkier. Could be the posing as well. These are very straight up and down, whereas the old Thalax had more of a wider legged pose, usually with one leg slightly out to the front. It's fine. It still looks good. No complaints there. I think this is a very, very faithful recreation of the Thalax. Good looking miniatures. I'm terrified to think of what they'll like to build. It's just in general, I'm on that train at the moment of everything Games Workshop's making. They seem to be making it the hardest kit to put together possible. And these terrify me thinking of that. Because like, if you can turn Dark Reapers into 12, 14 part models, what are they going to do to models like these? It's a terrifying thought. Alright, the Tech Thralls. Now, the Tech Thralls are a bit of a weird one. They've got this sort of zombie walk going on. They look like extras out of Michael Jackson's Thriller. I'm just waiting to hear that dun-dun-dun-dun as they sort of come along. And again, worried how many parts are these built in. These are the perfect miniatures to cast almost as one piece, depending how much detail you add to them. And I'd rather have a little bit less detail, because one, it's easier to paint, but two, it's a lot easier to build. And if you're doing a lot of these miniatures, you don't want to be spending all of your time building them and painting them, because they're just, frankly, not the most rewarding miniatures to paint. So we've got our Tech Thralls here, and we've got a lot more bare flesh and such exposed now, and they're basically servitors. They've turned them into servitors, which I don't think Tech Thralls really were servitors, at least not that level of lobotomized. They were to some degree lobotomized and modified, but not to that level. So it looks like we've got Lasloks. Looking at them, are there Mitraloks on them at all? Do they have the option? Doesn't really say. Okay. Well, anyway, it looks like they're all armed with Lasloks at a guess, from that typical Las tip that you can see on all of the weapons. I hope they have Mitraloks, because, the one weapon type is going to get very boring very quickly. The bayonet, I could do without. It's not the most interesting bayonet in the world. But overall, I think they're okay looking. Interesting they've gone with this sort of zombie walk aspect, the Walking Dead here. But yeah, I hope these are only like 4-part models, because anything more than that, it's just overkill. It's excess parts and frustration for the sake of it. And I can think of at least 3 ways of molding these so that they could be 4 or even 3-part models could be done. Head, torso, 1 part, weapon arm, backpack, the other 2 parts. It could be done. So I hope they're like that, because if you're playing Tech Thralls, you tend to take a lot of Tech Thralls and respawn them in. Alright, Triaros. So, Plastic Triaros, I think looks fantastic. It looks perfect. It looks like a Triaros should look like. Very, very faithful recreation into plastic. Clearly, though, they've done this one first because they want to also make the Karaknos, the heavy support version of this vehicle. I think that's exactly why they've done it. Why would you pick this first? Well, because you can turn it into 2 vehicles, which is fine. The Karaknos it's a cool vehicle, so it'll be nice to have them in plastic, because these were always sort of an impressively large lump of resin in the old list. Also interesting, they've added this little feature up on top. Not exactly sure what that is. Maybe a Mechanicum Hunter killer missile, at a guess. But that was not on the old resin kit. The rest of it, though, the little front sponson balls with the Volkite charges on them, they were around, at least on the Karaknos. I don't remember them on the Triaros. The Triaros always had the twin. In fact, let's go look over here on Games Workshop's web store and see what we get. See what the world's best web store can conjure up. And then we could do an actual comparison of one to the other. So we've got these little Volkite charges up here on the balls. I reckon they were big Volkites, and they sat lower down on the hull. So let's see. Yeah, there you go. So big ball turret with it coming out the side, pretty low down the hull. Okay. So looks to me like when they've modified this design, they've changed the hull profile a bit. It still looks like it should, but the gold band here, this piece of trim, looks like it's sitting much higher up on the track. So let's count the track links, right? From one gold trim to the other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not doing this because I think it's super important, but 1, 2, 3, 4. And the fifth one goes past it this time, and the first one starts in front of it. So it looks like they compressed the area between these two pieces of gold trim. When they did that, that meant they couldn't put the ball turret in the same spot because there was less room for it now. So when they moved the trim back, they've now made a new, and I think better, honestly, that's not the greatest looking turret, that Volkite ball turret. That's actually better looking. Yeah. So they ran out of space, but they've compromised and made something that looks better in its place. And you know what? I'm down here for it. Speaking of, that's the Karachnos, by the way, that I was talking about. So if they've made this thing in plastic, then they've made this thing in plastic. I think that's the only reason that you would start out with that particular vehicle, which is fine. I think that's a good addition to the range. So continuing on down into the previews, Castellax. I thought it was interesting they called the Sinister Dark Light Cannon. You mean the Dark Fire Cannon? Close. Yeah, I don't expect my PR people to know what things are called either. Now, they look good. They look pretty solid. So these guys are coming with the power blades or shock charges for their weapons, which, okay, I thought there was a third choice in there, but I could be misremembering. That's fine. Either way, it works. These are, again, a very faithful recreation of what's come before. I'm very curious to see how many parts, again, make these up. They're going to be probably, I'm thinking, very similar to the Sentinel, the Light Sentinel, price-wise. Similar in size, all that kind of thing. They're not as big as a Dreadnought, so they'll be a little bit cheaper than that. So I'm guessing Castellax Twin Pack, kind of a weird choice. Castellax is something you typically buy in sort of threes, but Twin Pack's fine. Maybe the threes thing is just a hangover from the resin days and you did buy them in bundles of 3. Maybe that's just in my head and I'm overthinking it. But another great recreation for the range. And then sort of an extra bonus or 2 in here, we have the Thanatar. So interesting, it says the Thunderous Thanatar Cavus Siege Automata mounts a giant plasma mortar. So it doesn't say anything in here about the Calyx. So the Calyx is another version of the Thanatar, armed with a gigantic las cannon, essentially in place of this plasma weapon. Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool looking kit. Very interesting to see it come to plastic. It is one of my favorite kits, actually, of all time, the Thanatar. So I'm really, really digging this. I think it looks good. Also, it's good that they've allowed the ability to leaf open the plasma weapon. These used to be always closed. The sort of petals, we'll call them, around the plasma mortar. They were always closed up on the resin version. So it's nice to see it come as an open leaf option, so you can build it either way. Yeah, I like my Thanatars a lot, and this is gorgeous. Why isn't this in the box instead of the Triaros? And then going down from there, a Magos. So, is this a multi... So here's the thing, right? You don't just need an Archmagos Prime, okay? And I'm not saying it's a bad model. Just want to put that out there first before the comments. What I'm going to say is the Archmagos is like a marine console. You can build them in literally half a dozen 8 ways. Not just with war gear changes, but the type of Magos they are, representing the different factions of the Mechanicum. And therefore, you need it to be a multi-part kit, not a monopose kit. So, have they given it different weapons? Probably not, because they've very specifically said Conversion Beamer, Volkite Serpenta, and Corpusant Stave. There's a lot more war gear going on than that. Machinator arrays, cyber familiars, all that kind of stuff needs to be included. There are other weapon types, Architect pistols, Graviton weapons. There's a whole bunch of stuff that can go on with an Archmagos Prime. So I don't know why they've picked just this single one here. If I was Games Workshop, you could argue that financially it's better for them to produce 8 kits and sell people 8 different kits. I think it's better to just produce one plastic kit which can build all the different versions of that HQ with a little bit of variety, a head that looks left, a head that looks right, different types of heads, give them like an ambidextrous neck that you can flip it so it points one way or the other, so that way the head can point one way or the other, and you can use the same head therefore on 2 different models to point in 2 different directions to make it look like a slightly different model. And I would give it the different weapons options at the same time as doing that in order to create a true multi-pose miniature. And who cares if, it's multi-pose, it's a little bit more annoying to build. Make my characters more annoying to build, okay? Characters are the most interesting part of an army. They're the part that you put your individuality into as the person sculpting the army, creating the army, building the army, painting the army, playing the army. And I want my characters to be the most interesting things, because when a person comes over and first looks at my army on the battlefield, typically the number one model people gravitate towards is your HQ. Who's the character leading the army? I want to see that, is what they think. And then Games Workshop goes and makes all this monopose crap that is our HQs, and then you get to basic infantry, and there'll be 12-part monopose models, and it's just, stop doing it. Make the infantry, the basic infantry, 3-4-part models. You've got the technology. Make the characters many parts so that we can customize them, and then you don't have to bring out constant new consoles and kits and have Heresy Thursdays where the community turns around and goes, oh great, another Imperial Fist console. When are we going to get a Legion console for this? Right? That keeps happening. It's just you can avoid 2 problems at once, and it works better from the perspective of manufacturing because now you have less SKUs to track. Instead of having to track 8 different product codes and manufacture 8 different characters, you can manufacture 1 product code, 1 character, which has many parts. And it also means that when you sell that character for a bit of money, because they want to sell the most basic character like this for 60, 70 Australian dollars, at least it's kind of justified because I'm getting a lot of bits in that pack. I'm not just getting this single pose model, which again, not a bad looking model. It just, as an Archmagos Prime, which should be a highly customizable character, it falls very fucking short of it. And it's bad from a production standpoint, it's bad from a making money standpoint, because even if you do equip this character with multiple different weapons, people aren't going to be like, oh, wow, I can magnetize this really easily. And with these long spindly joints, I'm going to easily magnetize this and use it as any character. No, they're going to have to still buy multiple of it. You're going to make your money, Games Workshop. It's just all about money at the end of the day, isn't it? And yeah. So anyway, I guess that's a little bit of salt at the end, but I think that's about as righteous as salt can get, isn't it? Like, we want our characters to be, something that is convertible, modifiable with ease, and fulfills the job it's supposed to on the tabletop. And our infantry are the polar opposite. They need to be the least customizable. You want some customization in there, but right now we've got the worst of both worlds. We have infantry, which, one set of bolter arms go together on the Marine, The Marine has one set of legs and torso that go together. He has one pose. You can turn his head, though, from left to right, and you can swap the bolter arms from one body to another. That's not customization, okay? That's not adding detail to the game. It just means that I've got so many bits to clean up when I'm building basic Marines. It's very frustrating. You know, legs are in constant multiple pieces now, with upper legs and lower legs, and you could go back to 3rd edition 40k or earlier, and they were able to make legs as one piece. It's just easier for them to mold it this way, as multiple pieces in the design of their mold, so they can get their slightly more dynamic monopose sculpts. And it's very frustrating. Very frustrating. Because I've built probably 200 Marines out of the new like Mark III, Mark VI style in the last couple of years. And I'm very, very over it. I'm sick of having to, like, we're making the Mark VI. Alright, I've got 3 models with the lower right leg is a separate piece. Which one does this lower right leg come on? And I've built so many of them now, I'm starting to memorize it and go, alright, that slots that model, that slots that model, without having to look at the numbers. But I'm still sick of doing it. Mark VI is the most lame basic power armor shape to mold. It's got no kneecaps, for crying out loud, and somehow it's got to be molded in 2 to 3 pieces per like lower legs, the legs from the hips down. It's insane to me. And it's of course got that front breastplate molded onto it, so you can't do torso swaps without getting out the pliers and a fucking blowtorch. Games Workshop. Sometimes you win, like in this box set, and sometimes you lose. Most of the time they lose, I'd actually argue. And then, of course, one thing I haven't spoken about this episode is price. What's the price point on this? And we have, Solar Auxilia boxes and such to lead by, so let's go to those. Warhammer Shop, Horus Heresy, Force of the Emperor, Solar Aux. Let's go. Come on. Where's the box sets? Let's go down to the out of stock region. Nicely populated. Seriously? No Solar Aux box set in the Solar Aux region. Alright, people, let's try that again. Shop the Horus Heresy. Start here, maybe. Age of Darkness box, which has way more stuff in it, so that's no good for a price guide, for freak's sake. This website is so bad to navigate. Every time I'm going to go back through... doesn't have like a box sets area. Alright, let's try Force of the War Master. No. So Solar Auxilia just Forces of the Emperor. That's nice to know. Rules and army books, unit types, vehicles. Jeez. About new releases. Maybe it's still in new releases, one of these box sets. No. Christ almighty. Alright. I've got one more choice here. I had to do a twofer in this episode. You get to see me navigating through this just awful website at the same time as trying to find a specific kit. I could just type battle group in and see what I get as a hit. Come on, where is anything on here? Are these battle groups so limited time, limited production that once they've just sold that first month's worth, they just go? That does not surprise me, actually, because they're not even, they are sold at a discount, but it's not like a crazy discount where it's like, oh, this is so cheap, it's fantastic. Alright, so one last sort of chance down the bottom here. Come on, battle groups. Nope. Alright, one last chance. Okay, so I found it, not by even though I typed Battle Group in on the Games Workshop web store, and I scrolled down, you can see there's no Battle Group. By going to Google and Googling Solar Auxilia Battle Group and then clicking on a link, it took us to Games Workshop where there is. Fuck this website! Ugh. Just face palming. Alright, 210. 210, that's what, 25 infantry, 30 infantry, was it? 25 infantry, I reckon. Yep, 25 infantry, the Leman Russ, the Heavy Sentinel, and the Draksan. So Draksan, Triaros, that's a 1-for-1 swap. Your 2 Castellax, probably same price as the Leman Russ, and your 5 extra infantry in here plus the Sentinel together probably makes up the price of the Thalax. Thalax will not be cheap. They'll be a similar price for 6 as... Well, Terminators are sold in sets of 5. They'll be more than that. They won't make them the same price as Terminators, but they're about the same size as Terminators. They're on 40mm bases, so I think Thalax will work out to be pretty similar to something like Tartarus Terminators, so over $100 in Australia for 5 of them. Yeah, so I think that's a good guide to go by, $210. Which part of the world is this even in? I don't even care. Whatever this box set costs in your local currency, I imagine the Solar, the Mechanicum will probably cost the same. And I imagine that it's still going to be a very expensive army. I think there were 210 sounds American to me. 210 American dollars, probably about right. Because I think it was 300 Australian dollars. Because it's like 3 sets minimum that you'd need at 3. I think it was like 330. So it was basically, no, it was 350 Australian dollars for that Solar Aux set. Because I remember complaining that you need to buy at least 3 of it for it to be worthwhile, and that was over $1,000 already, and it was only like 1,000 points. That's right. I remember now. I remember, people. What's that? The Matrix one? He's beginning to believe. Alright, I think that's where we're going to end up with this sort of set. And you would need to buy 3 of this set, realistically. The question, of course, is the Triaros. Is that something you want 3 of? And I would say no. Like every gun of these Games Workshop kits, they throw something you just don't care for in there. Not because it's not cool, not because you don't care for the model in general, but it doesn't suit the rest of the set. Same thing happened with the Spartan, and then we see how many Spartans are up for sale from that Age of Darkness box. So all the people this is personal beef I've got, all the people who come onto my channel and complain that I complain about these kits, you've proved that I was correct with your aftermarket sales techniques where you've turned around and sold the bloody tanks in the boxes that I said didn't belong in those boxes. You proved me right. So, you wonder why I am the way I am, now you know. Anyway, overall, I think the releases were actually very good. I held out no hope for any of the reveals at all that were coming out. So to see such interesting reveals, in many cases, I'm actually kind of impressed. The problem, of course, is what do the sculpts actually like to build, which is just something that's unspoken about. I'm going to do a video on it. I'm going to pull out some old sprues and some new sprues from my bits box and do some comparisons. But these new builds are very, very frustrating to me. And it's just not being spoken about enough, because I think if you're paying this much money, it should be a quality of life cost. It shouldn't just be the Games Workshop tax. Oh, well, Games Workshop's expensive. It should be a quality of life thing, okay? If I pay a lot of money, you want to be giving me the best damn experience possible with my miniatures. Shouldn't be getting situations where it's like, hey, there are more parts in scale military model kits than in Games Workshop ones, and they're often easier to build with less gaps, and the military model kits are coming in at a quarter of the price. And Games Workshop is such a huge juggernaut, it can't be the sales of, the T26 E4 Pershing Super Pershing are so great compared to the, I don't know, Predator battle tank that you can justify the Pershing being 4 times the size of the Predator and half the price. So that's something that needs to be spoken about. And for the love of God, it's great to see Mechanicum. It should have been a Mechanicum versus Solar Auxilia boxed set that came out, I think. They could have held out in the release of the two, bought them out at the same time. Instead, they're going for the old Games Workshop double dipperoonie, where they bring out Solar Augs, and 3 months later they drop Mechanicum, and they expect you to pay for that. In which case, I would say in 3 to 6 months' time. Actually, no, probably not that soon. Probably this time next year. Expect your Demons of the Ruin Storm. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm making the Outer Circle. This is 45 minutes of your life you're not getting back. And, suckers. Nah, I love you all. Have a lovely day. Look after yourselves.